beautiful boys and girls, and welcome to Storytime with Avant-garde Books. I'm Sherry Hardy, and I hope you are well. Today, I will be reading part one of a book called Betrayal of Tears. This book was written by Joseph Bruchac and illustrated by Diana Magnuson. Well, if you have a copy, feel free to read along with me, but if you don't, it's quite okay. Just make sure you're in a very comfortable place and you're relaxed so that you can listen to The Trail of Tears. A Sad Departure. It is October 1st, 1838. John Ross, the chief of the great Cherokee Nation, is looking at his Tennessee home for the last time. Hundreds of horse-drawn wagons are lined up along the Hiwassee River. All around him, other Cherokees have finished packing their belongings. It is time to go. John Ross is worried. His people do not have enough food or blankets. Many of them are ill. All of them are filled with sorrow. John Ross thinks of all they are leaving behind. He remembers the schools and the houses and farms the Cherokees built. He and his people do not want to leave their homes, but they have no choice. The 17,000 people of the Cherokee Nation must go west. John Ross climbs on a wagon. The people gather around him, and he says a short prayer in Cherokee. We ask for God's guidance on our journey, he says. Amen, say the people in reply. A bugle is sounded. The drivers urge their teams forward. Suddenly, a roll of thunder is heard. A black cloud appears in the western sky. Many Cherokees shake their heads. They fear it is an omen of bad luck. The long journey will be a hard one. A civilized tribe. Who are the Cherokees and why must they go west? The Cherokees were living in America long before the first white colonists arrived. Their oldest stories tell how Earth was shaped by the flight of the great buzzard. He flew low over the new land to dry it with his wings, pushing down the valleys and lifting up the hills and peaks of the great Smoky Mountains. Then two people emerged from the earth. They were Kanadi and Selu, the first man and woman. All Cherokees are their children. This story shows how connected the Cherokees feel to their land. It is a part of them. What we know as Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, and North Carolina were all once Cherokee land. Each Cherokee town had its own leaders, chosen by the people. They were proudly called themselves Aniyuhiya, the principal people. The name Cherokee comes from Jalagi, the Creek word for meaning people of different speech. When white settlers first came from Europe, the Cherokees tried to live in peace with them. For over 100 years, Cherokees traded with English colonists. Some Cherokee leaders even went to England to visit the king. Then, the American Revolution was fought between the British and the American colonists. When the war was over, American settlers wanted the land owned by Cherokees. There was more fighting, this time against Cherokees. 1,000 Cherokee towns were destroyed. The Cherokees gave up some of their land. In return, the United States promised to always protect the Cherokees. The Cherokee Nation wanted to live in peace with the United States. It moved its capital south to New Echota, Georgia. The Cherokees began to adopt more white ways. Many Cherokees became wealthy. They had plantation houses, sawmills, and large herds of cattle. Some Cherokee men went to schools in New England. The Cherokees even invented a written language all their own. In 1821, a man named Sequoia shared this great invention with his people. For many years, he had sought a way to write down the Cherokee language. Finally, he succeeded in creating a Cherokee alphabet. Each symbol stood for a sound in Cherokee. His little daughter, Ayoka, helped him. She was the first person Sequoia taught. At first, other Cherokees did not believe that Sequoia could really write their language. Sequoia could really, only the white people could make talking leaves, as the Cherokees called writing on paper. But whatever message Sequoia wrote down, Sequoia could read. No other person in human history had ever created a new alphabet all along. If you spoke Cherokee, you could now easily learn to write it. Soon, almost every Cherokee person could read and write. In 1827, the Cherokee Nation founded its own newspaper, printed in both English and Cherokee. It was called Tasagalaji Susalawi Sanui. Those words meant Cherokee will rise again. In English, it is Cherokee Phoenix, named for the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes. It is clear that the Cherokees had made the most of peace, but that peace would not last. Going west. The more the Cherokees succeeded, the more enemies they made. Many people did not want them around. They wanted Cherokee land for themselves. President Thomas Jefferson believed in a policy called Indian removal. This meant moving all Indians to Indian Territory, the lands west of the Mississippi River. Jefferson thought this policy would protect the Indians from dishonest white people who might trick them or kill them for their land. It would also open up the former Indian land to white settlers. President Jefferson said it would take 1,000 years for Americans to settle the West. Indian Territory would be Indian land forever. But Jefferson was wrong. It would take less than 100 years for the West to be settled. And there was no open land in Indian Territory. It was already occupied by Native Americans. Most Cherokees opposed giving up their land. Some Cherokees, though including Sequoia, decided to go west. They established new towns in Arkansas. It was not easy. The Indians who were already there made war on them. White settlers complained that the Indians had the best land. But the Arkansas Cherokees succeeded. They established schools and a formal government. Their stay in Arkansas lasted 10 years. Then the Arkansas Cherokees were forced into a new treaty. They moved farther west to Oklahoma. Most Cherokees, though, chose to stay in the East. It was their home. They would not give it up without a fight. By 1828, Cherokee territory was only a tenth of its former size. Other tribes had all been forced west, but 17,000 Cherokees remained. The Cherokee Republic created a new government modeled after the United States. John Ross was chosen to be the principal chief. He vowed to protect his people's right to their land. It was not easy. In 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected President of the United States. In his first address to Congress, President Jackson said that all Indians must now be removed. During the War of 1812, when General Jackson was fighting the British, many Cherokee volunteers had fought by his side. Two of those loyal Cherokees were Sequoia and John Ross. But Jackson didn't care that Cherokees had helped him in the past. He sponsored the Indian Removal Bill. Things quickly got worse for the Cherokees. Gold was discovered on Cherokee lands in Georgia. Georgia created anti-Indian laws. Similar laws were passed in Alabama. It was now illegal for one Cherokee to try to persuade another to stay on his own land. It was even illegal for Cherokees to dig for gold on their own land. The state of Georgia divided the Cherokee Republic into land lots. It set up a lottery to give those lots away to white men. Cherokee families came home to discover that everything they owned had been taken. These state anti-Indian laws broke agreements the United States government had made with the Cherokees. The Cherokees fought for their rights in court. John Ross traveled back and forth to Washington, D.C. In 1832, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Cherokee Nation, but President Jackson sided with the southern states. He allowed them to ignore the Supreme Court. One night, Chief John Ross returned from Washington to find that his own plantation had been taken over by lottery winners. The new white owners said that he could spend the night. However, he had to pay a fee to stay in his own house. The next day, he looked for his family. He found his wife, Quaddy, and their two little children on the road to Tennessee, soaked by the rain. Despite pressure from southern states, nearly all Cherokees were still determined to keep their land. However, the Cherokees were not completely united. A small group of wealthy Cherokees disagreed. They thought life was too hard for the Cherokee people in the East. Going west might be the only way for Cherokees to survive. And so they made a decision. Some Cherokees thought that it was a brave decision. Many others thought it was a bad decision made by bad men. This small group of Cherokees met with representatives of the United States government. They had no right to speak for their people as a whole. However, they signed a treaty agreeing to the western removal of the entire Cherokee Nation. All right, boys and girls, I will stop here. This will be part 1 of the book, The Trail of Tears. This story was written by Joseph Bruchac and illustrated by Diana Magnuson. I'll complete part 2 in the next recording. Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our educational YouTube channel. I'm going to put a link in the description box.